श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। ओम नमः पाणिनिकात्यायन पतंजलिभ्यः शब्दविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यः वंशऋषिभ्यः नमो महद्भ्यः नमो गुरुभ्यः. Today we are going to discuss the topic Vyakarana. As we all know, it is one of the 6 Vedangas, the auxiliary works on Vedas, which help us understand the meaning of Vedas. We first of all try to understand what is Vyakarana and what is the need for Vyakarana. What is the need for a discipline like Vyakarana in order to understand Veda? It's not that the applicability of Vyakarana is only in context of Vedas. It is applicable to the current day version of Sanskrit as well, and many concepts of these Vyakarana have been taken and adopted by various grammarians through all over the world to explain and analyze their own languages. So first of all, let us see what is Vyakarana. Vyakarana, it means to separate. There are several meanings of the word Vyakarana, which can be seen in various texts of Sanskrit and Vedic related literature. So the main meaning of Vyakarana, that too which applies to the current context, is to separate. Karanam. To separate. So what are we going to separate from what? We are going to separate sadhu shabdas from asadhu shabdas. Okay, we divide, we separate these two. And even in sadhu shabdas, in order to do this separation from asadhu shabda and all, what we do is we break the sadhu shabda into components and then analyze them. So this is Vyakarana. Why do we even need to do this? That is the question we need to ask ourselves. This is required because of the nature of the language itself. Okay. The nature of the language is that it changes rapidly. Because language is a tool used by one and all in a society, in a community. So no one can control the language. No one can go to everyone and say, okay, you can use this word, you can't use this word. Or say, this is how you have to construct a sentence, this is not you are supposed to construct a sentence. No one can do this. So it is completely used by the society without any restrictions, without any practical restrictions imposed on them. Therefore, we know people are from various natures. They are all of various natures, and they come from different backgrounds and they live in different types of places. So it is very natural for people to change the form of a word. Okay. So we can see, particularly in India, if you travel 50 kilometers from one place to another place, you can see the change in the language. Okay, Kala and Desha, these are the two things that make that have an immense influence on the language, and which cause this drastic change in the language. So the result of it is that the language or the literature composed in that language becomes incomprehensible over a period of time. Now, let us think, how many of us can understand the literature written in our language 500 years back? Our mother tongue, my mother tongue is Kannada. So 500 years back, whatever was written in Kannada existed then also, but it has changed its form. So what great poets like Kumaravyasa or Pampa wrote 500 years back, I can't make sense out of it without undergoing a specific training for that. To attain that ability, I will have to undergo some training to be able to comprehend that. Because though I am a Kannada speaking person, I know Kannada very well, but the form of Kannada language has changed from Kumaravyasa's time to my time. So you can easily relate this with your mother tongue. If it is Hindi, okay, works of Tulsidas and Kabir Das. If you are a Tamil speaking person, then Sangam literature, all these. It's not that we can't study them. It's not that we can't make any sense out of it, but to grasp the idea that the author is trying to communicate completely, we need to undergo a training. That means the language has changed its form drastically, so much that we are not able to comprehend it with the current form of language, though we are very well versed in the current form of language. So this is the very nature of language. Okay, you can take any language. It is a nature that it changes its form over a period of time. So as we have discussed in previous sessions also, for the people of Vedic tradition, it was very important for them to keep the text of Vedas intact first, okay, without allowing any kind of corruption into it. And then the second most important thing is to understand. So in the previous session, Gauri ma'am very beautifully explained how Nirukta plays an important role in understanding the Vedas. So without the understanding of Vedas, if we just keep on chanting it, it will not give us the intended results. So it is very important to understand the meaning. Therefore, Vedic literature, which was composed, we don't know, at least 4,500 years back, if we go by the historic timings. Okay, so it has undergone some changes. Actually, this problem was identified in the very early days of Vedic civilization. So we find this concern over this changing nature of language, and it's said that the Devas went to approached Indra and asked him to do Vyakarana of this Vak. Vak is Shabda. So te Deva Indram Abruvan Imanno Vacham Vyakurviti. Okay. So then Indra separated these wrong words from right words, sadhu shabdas from asadhu shabdas. This is what we find in Vedas. So this need for a Vyakarana, a tool to make sure that the language doesn't change its form very drastically, was felt in the very early days of Vedic civilization. Hence, we have Vyakarana. So anyway, the roots of all these Vedangas are found in Vedas themselves. Even the roots of Shiksha, it may be the roots of Jyotish or Nirukta. Similarly, we have the roots of Vyakarana in Vedas themselves. And since the Vedic period, many acharyas have given their contribution in keeping this language, Sanskrit language, very intact without allowing much change or corruption in the language. That is the reason, see, Ramayana was written at least 3,000 years back, if we go by the historic timings nowadays. But still, a person who is trained fairly in Sanskrit for at least 1.5 or 2 years, who can talk in Sanskrit, okay, who can read and make sense of Sanskrit, he can easily understand Ramayana. This is only because we had a strong tradition of Vyakarana that didn't allow the language to change very much. Okay, so similarly, Panini or Mahabhashya, the Patanjali who wrote Mahabhashya, he was, I think, 2nd century BCE or 1st century BCE. His work is so easily readable and understandable even today. 2,000 years back, the text was written, and we can read and understand very easily even today. So can you imagine this facility in any other language? So this is the contribution of Vyakarana to Vedic literature as well as general Sanskrit literature. Okay, so there have been many acharyas. Panini himself names and gives credit to many acharyas who were predecessors to him. But anyway, after Panini composed his Ashtadhyayi, there was no need felt for writing another Vyakarana. So it is so comprehensive and it is brief in its nature, but carrying a lot of meaning in it. So Panini's Vyakarana, Panini's Ashtadhyayi is the work that is being studied even today by most people in Sanskrit tradition. Even Acharya Hemachandra and Bhojaraja, these people also wrote their own Vyakarana Shastras, but they also followed Panini's footsteps, not to forget. And the influence of Panini's Vyakarana was such that once it came into the place in the tradition, all the previous works that were in the tradition, that were studied by the people, they are no more available today. Okay, so people gave them up and they completely adopted Panini's Vyakarana. So when we talk about this prevention of a language from getting distorted or changing drastically, there are several challenges to it. So what are the challenges? We need to analyze the language and then we have to set rules for that language. Okay, these are the rules we need to follow to make sure that the language does not change its form over a period of time. So what are those challenges in analyzing a language? The challenges are that as I told you, the language is being used by one and all in a community. Okay, so each one has his own background, his own prakriti. Okay, so he may make changes and the people around him may observe it and then they also start following him. Okay, that is a challenge. Okay, and then the Shabda, we call this as Shabda Shastra, and we have to analyze the Shabda, analyze the language. So what is the language? The language is sentences, that's all, nothing else. Okay, whatever we use, whatever we utter to communicate something, it is actually in the form of a sentence. If there is no sentence, there is no communication, that's all. So sentences are the thing which we need to analyze. Now how do we analyze a sentence? Because no two long sentences are alike. You take any work, any book, okay. So list out any 10 sentences having more than 10 words. Okay. See how many sentences are alike, are the same. Not even a single sentence. So this is the nature of the sentence. They are varying. Okay. So we can't say, okay, this sentence is correct, this sentence is wrong, because no two sentences are alike. So how do we approach that? This is another challenge. And we have various versions of a language. There is no one version of a language. It's true about Sanskrit also. We can clearly understand if we go through Ashtadhyayi. He says, Panini says, in the northern area, this is how people speak. Okay. In the southern area, Patanjali and Katyayana make these statements. In the southern part of the country, this is how people speak. So there are multiple versions of a language. So among all these available versions, which version do you take as the standard one and then explain the language? That's another challenge. And as I told you, you can't take sentences as a whole and analyze them. You have to break the sentences into pieces and then analyze them. So the first thing we do in the Vyakarana is that we break a sentence into words. And now we start analyzing the words. Now in order to analyze these words, we should have a fixed number of words, at least if not accurate, some number, 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 10 lakh. But unfortunately, that is not the case. The number of words in Samskrita, in a language like Samskrita where Prakriti and Pratyaya are added, so it is actually endless. 10 lakh words can be easily generated with 100 dhatus. Okay, so we have 2000 such dhatus and many dhatus can be generated using Ashtadhyayi tool. And if you also consider samasa, then it actually becomes endless, the number of words. So how do we analyze these words which have no end? So that is another big challenge. There is an interesting story in Mahabhashya which Mahabhashyakara narrates to show that learning words one by one is not at all the way to learn a language. Okay, he says Brihaspati Indraya Divyam Varsha Sahasram Pratipadoktanam Shabdanam Shabdaparayanam Provacha Nantanjagama. Brihaspati taught Indra Vyakarana. So what method did he adopt? He actually taught all the words one by one to Indra, started teaching all the words. He taught Indra this Vyakarana for 1000 years. 1000 Divya years. Okay. So our years into 360, that is 1000 Divya, the celestial years. And yet he was not able to complete the list. Okay, so just imagine it was Brihaspati, who is the Vakpati, who is the master orator. Okay, he was teaching, and Indra, the god of the king of the Devas, okay, he was a student, but yet they could not complete this study. Therefore, studying words one by one is never the way, okay, to study Vyakarana. Then these are the challenges. Then how do we go about it? How do we analyze the language and set some rules for the language? Okay. Therefore, Panini has his method here. We have sentence. Sentence is what we use to communicate. Okay. Break the sentences. How do we break the sentence? Where do we break? Okay. So there is a logic to do it, which I will show. Okay. Basically, what is done is you see the repetition of sounds in a given sentence, and when you make sense out of that sentence, see what meaning is being repeated. So repeating sounds, repeating meanings. Just map them. That is the methodology. Okay? So break the sentence into words. That is the first step. And then break the words into Prakriti and Pratyaya. Further break them. Okay? Then, if there is scope, if you see the repetition of meaning or sounds, again in that Prakriti, break that Prakriti again into Prakriti and Pratyaya. Okay? Then, if you observe, though the number of words is endless, okay, infinite, though the sentences which are used by us, okay, they are not repetitive, they cannot be repeated, no two actual sentences are alike. But if you break down these sentences into words and Prakriti and Pratyaya, the components of the whole, the components using which, that is the building blocks of this whole language, it comes to about several thousand components. Okay, a few thousand dhatus and few thousand pratyayas. Just you have to add them and do the required samskara to it, you will get the final form. And finally, you will get the sentence also. So, though the sentences are endless, though the words are endless, but the components using which the sentences and words are constructed, that means the components which are the building blocks of this language, they are limited. Okay. So, Panini's method, he first analyzed the language like this. Okay. Then map the repeating components with repeating meanings. We have broken the components. Okay. So when many people mistake here. Okay. When we discuss Vyakarana, we are not only discussing the Shabda, we are discussing the Shabda, the form of a word, with reference to the meaning. Without meaning, there is no Vyakarana. So you see a sentence, you see what is there, and you observe 10 sentences. You see what are the sounds that are being repeated in those sentences, and then you see what is the sense that sentence is making to us. Okay. So what are the meanings that are repeating in all these sentences, and then map them. This is very important. Okay. Finally, a very important thing, it's not only about breaking the word into components and assigning some meaning to it. Also, you have to see how all the meanings are connected in a sentence. Okay, there is a flow of meanings. So, that flow has to be observed. This is what Panini did before writing his Vyakarana. When I say Panini did, there was a tradition, the whole tradition of many thousand years before Panini. Therefore, this is what was available to Panini from his predecessors as well as his own effort. Okay, and then after having analyzed these words, okay, what Panini did is observe the repeated occurrences of letters of group or group of letters in different words. Observe the repetition of the same meaning. This is what I just explained. And then map repeating sounds with the repeating meanings. Then when you are mapping, finally you assign it. Okay. Just because some sound is repeating and some meaning is also repeating, you can't directly assign it. There are some checks and balances you have to do before assigning the meaning. Okay. Let me show you some example. We have 7 words here. Pathati, patita, patitum, patitavyam, pathakaha, patitavan, pathaha. Okay? In all these, there is one thing that is repeatedly heard. Pat. Somewhere it is pat, somewhere it is pat. Okay? And at the same time, when you make sense of these words, there is some meaning which is being repeatedly observed. Okay? Reads, read. So, the action of reading is repeatedly seen, experienced in your sense making. So, there is pat which is being repeatedly heard, and there is the action of reading which is repeatedly comes to our mind when we hear these words. We just mapped it. This pat means the action of reading. Okay. So, this one pat dhatu can generate thousands of words. Okay. And you can trace pat dhatu in thousands of words. And then the other way. What I did was, I took the words where the first portion was being repeated. Now here we will take the words where this second portion is being repeated. Pathitr, lekhitr, gantr, paktr, drashtr, kartr, potr. One who reads, one who goes, the one who cooks, one who sees. So that means there is some action being indicated by this first portion, that is Prakriti, and the tr which is seen in the end actually denotes the doer of that action, that is the karta of that action. So we will conclude tr is the doer of the action. So this is the basic methodology our ancestors had adapted to analyze the language. And if we observe, this is how we pick up the language also. Okay, it's very natural process. Every kid picks up languages like this only. Okay, but where these people, the Vaiyakarana, stand out is that they did it very systematically, and they did it for the whole language. Okay, they took all the available forms of a word or a dhatu, and then they analyzed it, and then the more important part is they taught us the method to derive all these words. Okay, not only analyzing the existing words, but also suppose I have heard only 1 or 20 words with pat dhatu. Now, if I know this methodology to derive various words, then I can actually know more than 1,000 words of the same dhatu, okay, generated from the same dhatu. So this is about the analysis. Then, having analyzed this, as I told you, Panini also gives us a derivation methodology, a step-by-step derivation methodology, which is very much comparable with the computer coding language today. Okay, so that's another topic, completely different topic and a very interesting topic. What is the methodology which we use to derive the words? Anyway, so for deriving words, Panini has listed the basic components. First, the left side thing, that is the Prakriti, okay, to which a suffix is added. He has listed around 2000 dhatus, okay, in his Dhatu Patha. It's an auxiliary work to Ashtadhyayi. And then he ordains joining pratyayas in specific meanings. There are suffixes, pratyayas, which carry specific meaning. Okay, you can add this pratyaya to this dhatu. There are some pratyayas which can be added to all dhatus. For example, we saw tru. Tru can be added to any dhatu. Okay, there are some dhatu specific pratyayas which can be added to only a few dhatus. So these people have meticulously studied these words. Okay, this methodology, though it looks very simple, but it is very complicated and one has to take a lot of pain to do this. So we have a dhatu, we have a pratyaya. Now if we just join these two, we don't get the ready form of word, ready to use form of word. Let us see the example in the previous thing. Pathakaha. Here, pat is the dhatu, nuvul is pratyaya. So, pat plus nuvul, how do you get pataka? So, there are several grammatical operations that are to be carried out to get this final form. Panini has given those rules also. So, what we have to do? Take the dhatus which Panini has given to us and take the pratyayas which Panini asks us to join with these dhatus, and follow the steps which Panini has ordained after joining these two dhatus. The final form we get, it will be a word which is there in usage. Okay? So, all the Sanskrit words which are found in our usage, day-to-day usage, are in the granthas by Valmiki, Vyasa, or many other people. All these words can be derived using Panini's methodology. And all these sentences can be analyzed and said, okay, this sentence is correct and this sentence is wrong. That is the beauty of Panini's work. And very importantly, with this we understand that what we are doing is that we are generating words. Okay. So, mere words put together, a collection of words, is not a sentence. Okay. There are relations between these two words, and the form of some words are determined by the other words also. For example, aham gacchami, tvam gacchasi. So, when I derive the word gacchami, I have to see what is the other word. Is it aham, or it is tvam, or is it devadatta? If it is aham, then I will derive gacchami. If it is tvam, I will derive gacchasi. So, many other things are to be taken care of, taken into consideration. So, when we derive a word, we actually look for the related words in a sentence, and then based on that word, we derive this word. So, hence, we get the whole string of a sentence. Otherwise, if you just derive words irrespective of other words, then you can't make a sentence. Okay. And once words are ready, the sentence is complete. When we put together these words, there are some phonetic changes when two words come together. Okay? Some changes in the sounds. Gacchami iti, gacchami iti. Pathami aham, pathamyaham. E becomes ya. So these are called sandhikaryas. Panini has given rules for these sandhikaryas also. And very interestingly, intonation. Panini has dedicated over 400 sutras for swara rules, giving swara rules. Intonation. Okay. Out of his 4,000 sutras in Ashtadhyayi, the 10%, okay, roughly 10% of his sutras are dedicated for intonation. 2000 years back, this person took pain to analyze the intonations across the country, and he included these rules in his Vyakarana. Okay? So, anyway, these days there are very few people who study them, but still Panini has done it. Okay? So, this is what we do in Vyakarana. Panini has done something, before writing his Vyakarana, okay, which he got from tradition and out of his own effort. So, having that understanding, he has given us a framework using which we can generate correct words. Okay, you just have to add right pratyayas to right prakritis and follow the steps given by Panini. The end result will be the words which we use in the loka. Okay, so this is what Paninian Vyakarana actually does. Now, since we are discussing Vedanga, and Vyakarana is a very important Vedanga, Mukham Vyakaranam Smritam. Okay, so what is the significance of Vyakarana in Vedic tradition? Patanjali in his Mahabhashya raises this question in the very beginning. Okay, you are going to teach us Vyakarana with 4,000 sutras and its commentaries and thousands of examples. It's really a painstaking exercise we are going to do. Now tell me why I have to do this. What is the significance of this in the Vedic tradition? So he says these are the 5 prayojanas of Vyakarana Shastra. Okay, if you study Vyakarana Shastra, Raksha, Rakshohagama Laghvasandeha Prayojanam. Raksha is the first prayojana, that Patanjali states. Raksha is protection, that is preventing the language from distortion or drastic changes, we can say. Okay, particularly Vedic texts. We know from Shiksha Shastra and many other texts that immense importance has been given to the preservation of Vedic texts, okay, in the oral tradition. So without understanding Vyakarana, you can't do Raksha of Vedas. Then Uha, okay, we'll see each one of these objectives very briefly. And Agama, Laghu, Asandeha. These are the 5 prayojanas stated by Patanjali. Raksha, why it is very important for us to study Vyakarana in order to protect Vedas? He says, because in Vedas, the words are slightly different from what we use in Loka. Okay, in general conversation, what we use, the words are slightly different. For example, here we see Atmana in Vedas, it becomes Mana. A is deleted. Okay, some letters are augmented. For example, Brahmanasaha Pitaraha Somyasaha. Brahmanaha Devaha is the word we use in Loka, but in Vedas, Devasaha, Brahmanasaha. Okay, so this extra sa is seen. Ajjase Rasuk. So, Varna Vikaraha, we can see phonetic changes in Vedas. In Loka, it is Graha. Veda, it becomes Udgrabha. Rigrahor Bhaschandasi. So, these forms are never found in common Laukika literature. These are only found in Vedas. What will a normal person do who is well versed in Laukik, the general language? Okay, he says, I am an expert in Sanskrit. Let me now study Vedas. So, in some Vedic text you will find Bhadrang Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha. Karnebhi, this is not the right form. Let me change it. Bhadrang Karnaihi, he may make it. Okay. So, Atmana, A is removed here. It's eliminated. He may say, okay, where is A? This is missing. My Guru must have forgotten to teach me that. He may add it here. So, these things should not be done. Okay. So, to understand this, one has to study Vedas, and Panini has dedicated a very significant number of sutras for Vedic usages, exclusively for Vedic usages. Those sutras which are for Laukika usages are also meant for Vedic usages. It's not that they are mutually exclusive, but there are some sutras, for example, as I told you, Hrigrahor Bhaschandasi Savartika and Brahmanasaha Ajjase Rasuk. So these are the sutras exclusively meant for Vedic usages to derive these words. So he who is not well versed in Vyakarana will attempt, okay, these changes, will attempt to make these changes, which goes against our objective of protecting Vedas. So one has to study Vyakarana if you want to protect Vedas. Then Uhaha. What happens in Yajna Prakriya, there are some mantras which are to be slightly modified by us. Okay. It is said in Vedas themselves. Therefore, if there is a mantra, it will not be applicable for all the devatas. Agnayetva jushtam nirvapami. Okay. Agnayam ashtakapalam purodasham nirvapet. Sauryam charum nirvapet brahmavarcha sakamaha. So, there is some havis prepared for Agni Devata and there is some havis prepared for Surya. Now, while preparing, he has to recite this mantra. Agnayetva jushtam nirvapami. This is a mantra given in Veda. But when we do the same thing for Surya, this is not the mantra you are going to use because it is meant for Agni. For Surya, you have to make your own mantra using this. So, Suryayatva Jushtan Nirvapami, you have to come up with this form Suryaya, which is the Vibhakti Ekavachana form of Surya. Okay. So, you can't do this if you don't know Vyakarana. Okay. Agnaye, let me make it Suryaye, something. Okay. A lay person may commit such mistakes. So, if you make even a single mistake in Yajnas, it is not considered good at all. Okay. Far from being good. It may give you the adverse phala. So, to avoid this, one has to study Vedas so that he can use correct words in Vedas. Okay. And Yajna. And Agama. So, this is a vidhi by the Agama that a Brahmana, he has to study Veda along with its Angas without considering anything in return. Okay, I have to do this for what? Don't ask for what. You have to do this, that's all. Okay, so without considering what we are going to get in return, we have to study it first. Then you will get what you are supposed to get. Okay. So, for that, Vedanga, Vyakarana is the most important Anga of Veda. Therefore, you have to study Vyakarana. These are some of the reasons to study Vyakarana that are listed by Patanjali. Okay. So, this heading has moved. Okay. Anyway. Asandeha, this is another example where the change in intonation may take the meaning somewhere else. Okay. So, Sthula Prashati is a word. What is the meaning of this Sthula Prashati? Okay. So, Prashati is an animal that belongs to this deer family. So, that deer which has very large dots on its skin, that has to be taken, or Sthulacha Asau Prashati cha, that Prashati, that animal which is fat, that has to be taken, or that animal which has large dots on it. Prishat means both. Sthulani prashanti yasyaha. Prishat means that dot-like markings on the skin. That is also called prishat. And prishati is that animal. So, this word can be explained both the ways. Sthulani prashanti yasyaha or sthulacha asau prashati cha. How do you determine what is the meaning of this word? Sthula Prashati. For that, you will have to check the intonation. So, intonation rules are given in Vyakarana. If you learn Vyakarana, then you will see the intonation and say, this is the meaning intended by the Vedas. So, these are some of the prayojanas of studying Vyakarana that Patanjali lists. Okay, as I told you, the intonation, swara, can bring upon very serious changes in the meaning of a word. You can see this. I think you have heard this story in Vedic literature part. Vrutra, he was performing a yaga to get a son who would kill Indra. Okay. So, in that yaga, he was supposed to recite this mantra, Indra Shatrur Vardhasva, with a particular intonation. Okay, during the yaga, he recited the mantra, but with a wrong intonation, which resulted in his own son getting killed by Indra. Indra Shatru can mean these two things. Indraha Shatruhu Yasya. Shatru means the killer, Shatayita, who slays. Okay. So Indraha Shatruhu Yasya. Saha api Indra Shatruhu. Indrasya Shatrurapi Indra Shatruhu. Okay. The killer of Indra is also called Indra Shatru, can be called Indra Shatru, or the one who gets slayed by Indra can also be called Indra Shatru. Now, if you change the intonation, it will give the different meaning altogether. That is the error made by that person, Vritra. Then he was killed by Indra. His son was killed by Indra. So these are some of the stories we get to hear from Vedas to emphasize on the importance of correct pronunciation and correct intonation. And these are some of the major topics of Ashtadhyayi. Derivation of Tingantas, Kridanta, Subanta, Tadhitanta, Sanadyanta, Sandhi, Samasa, Karaka, Swara. These are some of the very important things. Anyway, now as we were discussing Pada, we will try to understand with some more details. Okay, this Pada. So what is a Pada? A Prakriti with sup or ting suffix, okay, is called Pada. Suptingantam Padam. Okay. Word is a loose translation of the word Pada. Okay. Pada is a technical word used by Panini. So we should stick to the technical term as far as possible. So Pada is the combination of a Prakriti plus Pratyaya, particularly sup or ting Pratyaya. Okay, Suptingantam Padam. That means any form that is having sup suffix in the end can be called a Pada, or a word, a form having ting suffix in the end can be called a Pada. Sup and ting, these are the two sets of suffixes given by Panini. Sup has 21 suffixes, ting has two sets of 9 suffixes each. Okay, so Subanta Padas are generally noun words. Okay, Tinganta Padas are usually verbs. So Subanta and Tinganta, Subtinganta. For any word to be called a Pada, it has to carry sup or ting pratyaya in the end. Okay, now this is the overall word generation schema adopted by Panini. It looks very complicated, so we will try to understand it. Okay, so as I told you, Panini has given a list of 2000 roots, dhatus. Okay, so to that dhatu, you can either add krit pratyaya, ting pratyaya, or ting pratyaya. If you add a ting pratyaya directly to a dhatu, then it becomes padam. Patha, ti, pathati, pada. So the case rests here, and a pada is generated. Now instead of adding ting pratyaya, if you add a krit pratyaya, then it becomes pratipadikam. Okay, a nominal root or stem as it is called. So dhatu and pratipadika, these two are called prakriti in any given word. Okay, if you break it in the first step, you will get a dhatu and ting pratyaya, either a dhatu and ting pratyaya or a pratipadika and sup pratyaya. Suptingantam padam, I told you just now. Now dhatus list is given. Where do we get this pratipadika from? Okay, so if you add krit pratyaya to dhatu, then it becomes pratipadika. This is one type of pratipadika. Okay, you add a krit pratyaya to a dhatu, then you get pratipadika. Then to that pratipadika, you just add sup pratyaya, you will get a pada. For example, Rama. Ram is the dhatu. You add a krit pratyaya, that is ghan, then you get pratipadika Rama. Then to that you add sup suffix Ramaha. Now, if you have this sup suffix in the end, it will be marked as pada and it will be ready for use. Okay. So that which is called pada, that which gets this tag pada, is eligible for usage in the loka. Okay. Now this is how we derive this word. Now there are several other ways to derive a pratipadika. For example, okay, we added krit pratyaya to dhatu, we got pratipadika, and then we can add a tadhita pratyaya to it. Then that tadhita pratyaya anta word again becomes pratipadika. We can add a stri pratyaya to it. Okay, and from to that we can add a tadhita. Again it becomes pratipadika. Then every time it becomes a pratipadika, you will get supratyaya, okay, which can be added to it and which results in pada. Now, another interesting thing, you get a pratipadika, you make it a pada, and then you bring two padas together, you join two padas, then it becomes a samasa. Okay? Sita pati, Sitayaha patihi, Sita pati. Now, Sitayaha and patihi, these two words joined together become Sitapati, the single word. This is samasa, and you can go on adding words like this and make as long samasas as you can, as you want, as long as the rule permits and it makes sense to the listener. Okay. So we have many such long samasas in our Nyaya tradition and also the Kavya works. Sadhvasadhavamana harina ganacharana kharatara khurakoti patano dhota dhatu dhuli pali patalita vikata katakataya. This one word. One word. This is one word. So sadhvasa, dhavamana, harina, gana, charana, khara, kharatara, khura, koti, patana, uddhuta, dhuli, pali. All these words are added to the previous words and we get the final samastapada this long. And the interesting thing is, it makes sense to the listener who is well versed in Sanskrit, of course. Okay? Who has a good training in Sanskrit. This will make sense to him. Okay. So, this is the way we derive padas, words in a sentence. Either you add a ting pratyaya to a dhatu to get a pada directly, or you add krit pratyaya to a dhatu and it becomes pratipadika, then you add sup, it becomes pada. And to this pratipadika, you can add various other pratyayas. For example, tadhita pratyaya, again it becomes pratipadika. For example, Dasharatha is a pratipadika. Okay? So, you add tadhita pratyaya and in to it, Dasharathi it becomes. What is the meaning of Dasharathi? Dasharatha's son is Dasharathi. So, that again becomes a pratipadika. Supratyaya, Dasharathihi. And there are some pratipadikas which are not derived. Again here, we have two schools of thought. Okay? Many grammarians think that these cannot be derived because the dhatus here cannot be traced. So, they are called avyutpanna pratipadikas. For example, tat, etat, sarva, all these are considered as avyutpanna pratipadikas. Okay. But the other school of grammarians, which were before Panini, grammarians such as Shakatayana, okay, so they insisted that every word, each and every word that is seen in Sanskrit language should be derived from a dhatu. Sarvam namacha dhatuja maha shakatasya tokam. Okay, so they are of that opinion, but anyway, in our current scheme of things, we have something called avyutpanna pratipadika, the pratipadikas which are not derived from any dhatu. Okay, then to a dhatu, you can add some pratyayas. These are called sanadyanta pratyayas to get another dhatu. Pathati, path dhatu, if you add nich to it, it becomes pathayati. It's a different meaning, to make someone read. And if you add san to it, pipatishati, willing to read. And then young, papathyate, reads again and again. So, if I bring one tinganta, okay, that means it has 10 lakaras in kartari karmani. Each lakara has got 9 forms, 90 plus 90, 80. So like this, the number of words will just go on, and each dhatu, okay, can produce easily 360 forms. Easily, I'm saying, okay, without doing much gymnastics. You can easily derive 360 forms from one dhatu, which can easily make sense to a listener. And then, based on your ability to envisage or conceptualize these new words, you can go on deriving new words. And the interesting thing is, they will make sense to a listener. That is the most important thing. Okay, that's not the case with other languages. I can't take just some Prakriti and Pratyaya and add and use it. That's not the case in Sanskrit too, but in Sanskrit there is a lot of flexibility, and a well-learned listener will understand what you are intending to communicate. Okay, so this is how Vyakarana works. Okay, so I have given a brief introduction to Vyakarana Shastra. So as far as borrowing words from other languages is concerned, it is not encouraged in Sanskrit. Okay, so either we have so many dhatus and pratyas, we can come up with our own new words that can suit the nature of Vyakarana and Sanskrit language. However, I will have to say that if you observe some works on Sangeeta Shastra and Natya Shastra, you will find other words being borrowed by other languages, but most of them are in the form of samjna, that is name. Okay, so names can be borrowed, that is no problem. Even today in Sanskrit, we can borrow names into Sanskrit and Sanskritize it. Okay, our Guruji, my Guruji is Guruji Ranganath Sharma ji, had written a very beautiful article on how to Sanskritize these names, borrowed words from other languages. And as far as the words like internet and other things are concerned, actually we can come up with our own words in Sanskrit. Okay, Antarjala, these are the words now being used for internet and other things, and we should stick to it as far as possible.
Can I just say add to that, Nagendraji?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so you are quite right that we can Sanskritize and we can form new words, because Sanskrita is a Sughatita Bhasha, Prakriti Pratyayatmika Bhasha, and therefore for internet we can always have Antarjala, or for like bicycle, Dvichakrika, Agniratha, Shakatika. So these are the words, which we have formed. And not only Sanskrit Bharati is of course trying now, but even before that, like for example, I'll just tell you an example, how we always have the Arthanitya Parikshana in whatever we do. For example, when we iron clothes, right? Iron clothes, we remove the wrinkles and make it straight uniformly, right? And therefore, Samikaranam, that is ironing. Now, this was like a Chvi formation, because it is based on that function. So Sanskrit has that potential to create newer words, and therefore there is no limit to the words in which, in Sanskrit language. As you rightly said, there are 2000 roots plus 10 lakaras plus then active and passive with the 20 praparadika prefixes. Again, it will go on and on with combinations of Pratyagama, Sangama, like that 2-3 prefixes. Again, it will go on. Then there are denominatives and sannantas. So it's endless and countless. So that is the beauty. So what about the nominal forms or the supratyayas? So in Sup also, a very interesting Subhashita I would like to say. Of course, Sup also has many, like what you can say, the Visheshanas. Of course, they also have the three lingas and then the vachanas and the vibhaktis. So 7 3s are 21 forms are there of every Subanta Pada. And regarding the genders, as we all know, there are three genders, masculine, feminine and neuter. There is a very funny Subhashita because Vyakarana, otherwise it becomes a very dry and a very like a technical and mathematical subject. So there is one person who has come out with a nice Subhashita. I think last time when he talked about Bahunadhishe Pataputra Vyakaranam, Swajano Mabhut, Sakrit Shakrit, etc. Here I am quoting one other very fine Subhashita. Manas, the word manas in Sanskrit is neuter gender. Tan manaha, tan me manas shiva sankalpamastu, right? So one Subhashitakara has written a very nice Subhashita. He says, Napunsakam itim matva priyayai preshitam manaha. Manas is Napunsaka and therefore I sent it to my Priya. But Tattu Tatraiva Ramate. That mana is staying there only. Hata Paninina Vayam. We are doomed by Panini. Panini told that manas is neuter and therefore I sent it to Priya. So there is no harm, because he is Napunsaka. But see, the Napunsaka is also staying there only. So this is how, from grammar also we can derive happiness. And it's truly, but for grammar, language won't be that organized. So Vyakarana is, and Prathame Tavat Vidvansaha Vayyakaranaha. It is always said. Who are the best Pandits? The Advaitins, the Mimamsakas, the Nayayikas? No. The Vayyakaranas, like Nagendraji, who are the Prathame Vidvansaha. Sometimes I mischievously put one Avagraha in that. That is just a kid, but then it was really
don't take consideration, usage into consideration and just go by the rules, then it is Avidvamsa only. Yeah.
No, but it was, I think you could have gone for hours only on that one slide of Dhatu, Sukma, Pratyaya, Pratika and Pratyaya. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, Nagendraji. And that too, due to some unforeseen conditions, we could not have the scheduled lecture. And just in a day, he prepared, this Vyakarana lecture was scheduled next month in November. But he was so kind, and it's a university talk, so he came forward. So he deserves a special applause from everybody, from me at least. Yeah, thank you, Nagendra.
Okay, I think there is a very good and acclaimed by scholars. The translation is by I don't remember the exact name, Basu. So I can send that list of translation to them personally, okay, through mail or not. Right now I don't remember anything like that. But there are translations, good translations are there, I can assure them.
Yeah.
The meaning of the word palala you will have to check in koshas, but yeah, it is used in the sense of meat. Okay, that is right. Okay. That is there. But in that particular context, what other meaning it could have carried, we'll have to check it. So this sometimes goes beyond the scope of a Vayyakarana, because we can't determine the meaning of a word just based on that particular word. We have to take the context also into consideration. But palala means meat, that is there. Yeah, that I can confirm. So there is a book written by Swami Dayananda Saraswati by the name Sauvaraha. Okay, it is published by Ramlal Kapoor Trust and edited by Pandit Yudhishthira Mimamsaka, I remember. It is in Hindi. You can check that. That is one good book. Most of the books I know are written in Sanskrit only. But this translation of Ashtadhyayi by Sri Vasu, it contains sutras on Swara Prakriya also. You can also check the translation. I don't think so. As I said, the nature of language is to change. Okay, so any form of language that has been there in usage will undergo change. So Sanskrit also has undergone change, which is called Prakrit. Okay, people scholar claim otherwise also, but if you take Sanskrit as the standard language being spoken by people, then it has undergone some changes, which resulted in the local version of that language. So we are used to that local version of language, and if we refuse to go to the actual form of it, then that's the problem lies there, I think. It's not because of the grammar that Sanskrit has gone out of usage today. Formulating a robust grammar is something good for a language. Okay, if we didn't have such a grammar, you could never imagine understanding Valmiki's works today. Okay, so that is another thing, the flip side of the argument you have to consider. Okay. So a language having a robust grammar is not its downside. That's my opinion.
I would like to say that Sanskrit is not continued is wrong. Sanskrit is continued.
Yes, that's
otherwise, yeah. I mean, so many people, our young students are also doing Vakyartha in Sanskrit. Not only our students, I mean, all over the world, I'm seeing this. So, and there is an increasing demand for Sanskrit. It's more of the fear for grammar that people get averse to it. It's not the grammar per se, but the fear of grammar that dissuades people from Sanskrit. The more interesting part of language is the grammar, and it's so very analytical, so very mathematical that we should be rationally studying it. But it is more of the fear because, I think we can blame our education system for that, but not Sanskrit grammar for that, certainly.
So in the end of this session, I just wanted to show some shlokas in praise of Vyakarana Shastra particularly. So this is the praise of Vyakarana Shastra and Vaiyakarana, which we see in various granthas like Vakyapadiya and Mahabharata. So yascha vyakurte vacham yascha mimamsate dhvaram ubhautau punyakarmanau pankti pavana pavanau. He who does this Vyakarana of a language, separates Ashuddha Prayoga from Shuddha Prayoga and sticks to Shuddha Prayoga, he is a Pankti Pavana Pavana. Anyone sitting with him in the same line, he will be Puta. He will be purified just by the presence of that person. Okay, then we have another shloka. Idam adyam padasthanam siddhisopana parvanam iyam sa mokshamanana majimha rajapaddhatihi. So in the path of Siddhi, this is the first step you have to take. Okay, climb you have to. And iyam sa mokshamanana majimha rajapaddhatihi. If you want to attain moksha, this is the rajapaddhati. This is where you start from. Okay, rajamarga. So rajamarga means to say that there are no curves and bends. You can clearly see the other end from this side. Okay. And then yastu prayunkte kushalo visheshe shabdan yathavad vyavahara kale sonantamapnoti jayam. So he who is able to use correct words in the correct context. Okay, word also has to be correct and the meaning also has to be fitting to the context, and that person will attain anantam apnoti jayam. Anantam jayam apnoti. He wins everywhere. Okay. Paratra apashabdaihi dushyati. So he doesn't know this. He doesn't know this Vagyoga, the correct usage of words. He will have that stain of apashabda prayoga, and like Indra or other people, he will have the consequence of that. Okay, which may not be always enjoyable or desirable. So with this, we end the session here. Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.